The neon glow of the Crispy Haven sign buzzed faintly against the night sky, its flickering letters barely holding onto their light. Daniel Carter stood across the street, hands buried in the pockets of his worn-out jacket, his breath curling into the cold air. He had built this place, poured years of his life into it. And yet, he barely recognized it anymore. From the outside, it looked like any other fast food joint. The glass windows were smudged with fingerprints, the parking lot littered with crumpled wrappers. The sight made something tighten in his chest. Had it always been like this? Or had he just been too far removed to notice? A gust of wind carried the scent of fried chicken toward him, rich and familiar. It should have been comforting, but tonight, it felt like a challenge. He adjusted the gray beanie covering his neatly combed hair, tugged the old hoodie tighter around himself, and stepped forward. No one would recognize him like this. To them, he was just another tired man looking for a meal. The door swung open with a chime, and immediately, a wave of warmth and grease-laden air engulfed him. The place was half full, families huddled in booths, teenagers laughing over oversized sodas, a lone trucker scrolling through his phone while picking at a pile of fries. The register line moved sluggishly, customers shifting impatiently as they waited. Daniel stepped in, blending into the queue. His sharp eyes darted toward the counter, where a young cashier slouched against the register, tapping at the screen with disinterest. His name tag read Kevin. He barely looked up as he mumbled, "Next." An elderly woman shuffled forward, purse clutched in trembling fingers. I think I have enough for the chicken combo. Could you check?" Kevin sighed, tapping the total. $7.49. The woman hesitated, counting out her bills with shaky hands. A few coins slipped from her grasp, clinking against the floor. She bent down, struggling to reach them. Daniel watched as Kevin's mouth twisted in irritation. "Ma'am, there's a line," he said, voice flat, as if he had long stopped caring. Before Daniel could step in, another employee appeared, a young woman in a stained apron, her hair tucked into a loose ponytail. She crouched down, scooping up the fallen change. "Take your time, ma'am," she said gently, pressing the coins back into the woman's hand. Daniel noted her name tag. Mia. Unlike Kevin, she still had light in her eyes, though exhaustion clung to her like a second skin. The woman managed a grateful smile and placed her order. When she moved away, Mia turned to Kevin. "You don't have to be rude." Kevin snorted. "I'm not paid to babysit." Daniel's jaw tightened. He had seen enough. These were his employees. His brand. This was the experience customers walked away with? His turn came. Kevin barely glanced up. "What d'you want?" Daniel kept his voice steady. "Crispy special. Large." Kevin punched it in without enthusiasm. $9.75. Daniel handed him a crumpled 10, waited for the few cents of change, but Kevin had already moved on. "No receipt." "No thank you." He took a step back, his frustration mounting. He had built this business on service, on quality, on care. Where had it gone? He found a seat near the counter, close enough to observe, but far enough to remain unnoticed. The kitchen was partially visible from where he sat, the sizzle of oil and the rhythmic clatter of metal echoing through the small space. As he waited, his eyes flicked to Kevin and Mia, now talking near the fryer. Their voices were low, but in the quiet lull between orders, their words carried. Kevin smirked, arms crossed. "Man, if people knew what really happens here." Mia shot him a wary glance. "Don't." Kevin chuckled, leaning against the counter. "What? It's not like he cares. The boss? He's too busy rolling in money to give a damn." Daniel's fingers curled into his palm. Mia's shoulders tensed. "We shouldn't talk about this." Kevin scoffed. "Why not? You scared?" She hesitated, then shook her head. "It's just wrong. We're out of fresh chicken, and Rick told me to just use the expired batch." Daniel froze. Mia's voice dropped lower. "What if someone gets sick?" Kevin waved a dismissive hand. "Relax. No one notices. Fried is fried." Daniel's stomach turned. Expired food? At his restaurant? He had sat in meetings, demanded quality checks, signed off on protocols. This shouldn't be happening. And yet, it was. His pulse quickened, but he forced himself to stay still. Keep listening. Keep watching. Mia exhaled, rubbing her temples. This isn't what I signed up for. Kevin let out a dry laugh. Then quit. No one's forcing you to stay. A silence settled between them, thick with unspoken words. Then, as if sensing something, Mia's gaze flickered toward Daniel. Their eyes met. For a moment, her expression wavered. Recognition? Suspicion? He wasn't sure. But she looked away quickly, turning back to her station. Kevin followed her glance, his brows furrowing. Dude's staring like he's a health inspector or something. Daniel lowered his gaze, gripping the edge of the table. He had come looking for insight. What he had found instead was a problem bigger than he ever expected. And now, he had a decision to make. The kitchen hummed with the familiar sounds of oil bubbling and utensils clanking, but Daniel barely heard them. His pulse pounded in his ears, the weight of what he had just overheard settling heavy in his chest. Expired food. Lies. A manager, his manager, ordering employees to cut corners at the customer's expense. He forced himself to take a slow breath, steadying his hands on the edge of the table. This wasn't just negligence, it was a violation of everything Crispy Haven was supposed to stand for. And yet, the employees spoke as if it were routine. How long had this been happening? How many customers had been served bad food? Across the counter, Kevin laughed under his breath, tossing a handful of fries onto a tray. Look at him. Still staring. Mia's back was to him, her shoulders rigid as she reached for a fresh batch of chicken. Or at least, it should have been fresh. Daniel watched as she hesitated, fingers hovering over one of the trays. He could see the hesitation in the way her body tensed, the way her breathing shallowed. She glanced around, as if making sure no one was watching. Then, with a barely perceptible sigh, she grabbed a different tray, the one that hadn't been mentioned in the hushed conversation. The fresh batch. Something in Daniel's chest eased. She wasn't willing to do it. Kevin, however, noticed. Seriously? He scoffed. Rick said to use the other one. Mia shook her head, muttering under her breath, but Kevin leaned in. What's your deal, Mia? You trying to get yourself fired? She kept her voice low. I don't serve bad food. Kevin rolled his eyes. Like anyone cares. Daniel's jaw tightened. He cared. But no one here seemed to believe that the boss, the man behind this entire operation, would. He had built a company, but somehow he had failed to build trust. A new tension settled in his gut. Maybe that was the real problem. Rick, the manager, had clearly fostered an environment where employees believed they were disposable, where profit came before integrity. Kevin had absorbed that mindset completely. But Mia, she was different. His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of approaching footsteps. A man emerged from the back office, sleeves rolled up, a clipboard tucked under his arm. Rick. Daniel had seen his file before, polished performance reports, strong numbers, nothing out of the ordinary. On paper, he was one of the company's best. But the man standing in front of him now had the air of someone who controlled through intimidation rather than leadership. Rick scanned the kitchen, his gaze landing on Mia. Everything going okay? Her grip on the tongs tightened. Yeah. Rick's eyes narrowed. He stepped closer, lowering his voice, but Daniel could still hear. Then why aren't we using the other batch? Mia hesitated. Daniel could see the battle happening inside her. If she obeyed, she'd be complicit. If she refused, she could be out of a job. Kevin smirked, watching, enjoying the show. Daniel's knuckles whitened under the table. Every instinct screamed at him to stand up, to end this now. But if he revealed himself too soon, he might not uncover the full extent of the damage. Mia swallowed hard, eyes flickering between Rick and the food. And then, in a quiet but firm voice, she said, "It's bad. I won't serve it. A tense silence followed. Rick exhaled sharply through his nose, shaking his head. You really think you're some kind of hero, huh? His voice dripped with condescension. This isn't fine dining, sweetheart. It's fried chicken. No one's gonna know the difference. Mia's lips pressed together. Daniel could see her fingers trembling slightly, but she didn't back down. That's not the point. Rick's expression darkened. Oh, I see. You think you run this place. He took a step closer, voice lowering into something almost venomous. Let me remind you, you don't. I do. And if I say we serve it, we serve it. Kevin let out a small chuckle, like this was just another form of entertainment. But Daniel was watching Mia. The fight in her eyes. The way her breath grew shallow. She was alone in this. Outnumbered. Outranked. And no one was coming to help her. Daniel had seen enough. He rose to his feet, slow and deliberate, suppressing the rage simmering beneath his skin. Rick barely glanced at him, already turning back toward his office. Enjoy your meal, sir, he called over his shoulder. Daniel's voice cut through the air. I think I just lost my appetite. The tone must have caught Rick off guard, because he hesitated before turning around. His brow furrowed as he gave Daniel a second look. Kevin snickered. Dude's been sitting there eavesdropping all night. Rick sighed, looking Daniel up and down. You got a problem? Daniel stepped forward, just enough to make his presence known. The room suddenly felt smaller, the space between them charged. Yeah, he said, voice steady. I do. Rick crossed his arms. Then take it up with corporate. Daniel tilted his head slightly, his gaze unwavering. Maybe I will. Rick smirked. Good luck with that. Daniel stared at him for a moment longer, then let out a small, almost amused exhale. Yeah, he said, slipping his hands into his jacket pockets. Good luck with that. Something in the way he said it made Rick pause. A flicker of something, uncertainty, maybe, crossed his face. But then he scoffed, shaking his head, and walked off. Kevin turned to Mia with a grin. Dramatic, huh? She didn't answer. Her gaze was fixed on Daniel, a faint crease forming between her brows. Something in her expression told him she was starting to put the pieces together. Daniel gave her a small nod, then turned toward the exit. He had everything he needed. Now, it was time to act. The morning air was crisp as Daniel stood outside Crispy Haven, watching the employees filter in for their shifts. He had barely slept. The weight of what he had uncovered sat heavily on his shoulders, a reminder of how far things had strayed from his vision. It wasn't just about expired food. It was about trust, leadership, and the culture that had rotted from the inside out. He had let this happen, but he wasn't going to let it continue. Pushing open the door, he walked inside, not as a nameless customer this time, but as the man who owned this place. The early crew moved quickly, preparing for the rush. Mia was behind the counter, tying her apron. Her eyes flickered toward him, her brow creasing in recognition. Kevin leaned against the counter, scrolling on his phone, oblivious. Rick stood by the register, clipboard in hand, already barking orders. We're pushing meal deals today. Get those up front. He didn't even glance at Daniel. Sir, we open in 15 minutes. Daniel stepped forward. Then I guess we have 15 minutes to talk. Rick finally looked up. His irritation turned to confusion, then something unreadable as he studied Daniel's face. Mia was staring now, realization dawning in her eyes. Kevin snorted. Oh, great. The guy from last night's back. Rick's expression hardened. I don't know what kind of issue you think you have, but if it's about expired chicken, Daniel interrupted, his voice calm but sharp. It's about lying to customers, cutting corners, and turning this place into something it was never meant to be. Rick scoffed. Listen, I don't know who you think you are. Daniel took another step forward. I know exactly who I am. The room fell into stunned silence as he pulled off his beanie, shaking out his neatly combed hair. The disguise was gone. What remained was Daniel Carter, owner of Crispy Haven. Kevin's smirk vanished. His phone nearly slipped from his hands. Mia's lips parted slightly, eyes wide. Rick's face drained of color. You. Daniel didn't let him finish. I built this company from the ground up. And last night, I sat in this very restaurant and watched my own employees serve expired food, disrespect customers, and treat this place like a joke. His voice was even, but each word carried weight. That ends today. Rick took a half-step back, but forced himself to stand his ground. Look, Mr. Carter, this isn't what it seems. It's exactly what it seems, Daniel cut in. His gaze swept over Kevin, then landed on Rick. You ordered your employees to put people's health at risk. You made them feel like they had no choice. He turned to Mia. But she made a choice. Mia stiffened. She refused, Daniel continued. She knew it was wrong, and she had the guts to stand up to you. His expression darkened as he looked back at Rick. Which is more than I can say for you. Rick's mouth opened, then closed. You're fired. The words hit like a hammer, loud enough that the employees in the back stopped working. The entire room went still. Rick let out a breathless laugh. You're not serious. Daniel didn't blink. I'm dead serious. Pack your things. Get out. Rick's jaw clenched. He looked around, as if searching for someone to back him up. Kevin shrank behind the counter. Mia stared at the floor. The other employees kept their heads down. No one spoke for him. Finally, Rick let out a bitter chuckle. Fine, he muttered, tossing the clipboard onto the counter. Good luck running this place without me. Daniel's voice was ice. I think we'll manage. Rick stormed out, slamming the door behind him. The tension in the room lingered, heavy and unspoken. Kevin swallowed hard. What now? Daniel turned his gaze on him. You knew about this. Kevin paled. I mean, it's not like I was in charge. But you didn't stop it, Daniel said. You laughed about it. That tells me everything I need to know. Kevin glanced at the door, as if considering making a run for it. I'm giving you a choice, Daniel said, his tone quieter now, but no less firm. You can shape up, start respecting this job, and earn your place here. He took a step closer. Or you can walk out that door right now. Kevin hesitated. For the first time, he looked truly unsure. Then, slowly, he nodded. I want to stay. Daniel studied him for a long moment. Then prove it. Kevin swallowed and gave a small nod before stepping back behind the counter. Daniel exhaled, rolling his shoulders. The worst of it was over. But there was still one more thing he needed to do. He turned to Mia. She hadn't said a word since the reveal, but her expression was unreadable. Not relief, not satisfaction. Something else. You stood up for what was right, Daniel said. That's the kind of person I need leading this place. Her brows lifted slightly. What? I need a new manager. He held her gaze. And I think it should be you. Mia blinked. I'm not. She shook her head. I don't know if I can do that. I do, Daniel said. You already proved it. She hesitated, uncertainty flickering across her face. Then, slowly, something shifted, a realization, a spark of belief in herself. Finally, she nodded. Okay. Daniel smiled, the first genuine smile he'd had in a long time. It wasn't just about firing the bad apples. It was about fixing what had been broken, about rebuilding one step at a time. And this was the first step.